I'm in disguise for this one.
He's doing a non for the Bitcoin criticism. We are live, gentlemen.
Hey, guys.
So Quan NFT.
Where did you get that, dude?
Four of us actually set up our own private NFT collection of each of the biggest arseholes of the bear market. So, we have Dow Quan, which I have, SBF, the 2AC, 3AC guys.
Are you going to be selling
I have
those?
to expand the collection before this bear market ends.
Yeah, right. All right, everybody, we are live. We have our favorite Bitcoin Maxi, Shaun. I haven't shaved all week, and so in honor of Shaun, are you live? Are you live from the office, Shaun, or are you at the pub? Is that why we're not doing?
I'm in the office. Obviously, considering the topic, I'm incognito. I want my Maxi buddies beating the shit out of me for spilling the beans on Bitcoin.
I think they'll know, Shaun.
I'm joking.
All right. So, any big news today, Joe, before we get started? Market looks steady, sideways.
Yeah. The equities are green. Nikkei 225s are up for the end of the day, and everything else in crypto seem to be holding. So I don't see much, up or down, no volatility. So I guess that's good.
I think.
Compare.
This news, obviously, they're filed for bankruptcy.
Yes.
That.
Which is, I think,
SEC charged SBF for fraud officially.
And somebody was talking about restarting the FTX exchange. Good Lord.
Oh, yeah. The CEO, the new CEO from the bankruptcy is saying he may restart it, which would be an interesting strategy. Oh, shit, that's hot.
Obviously, it's not as bad as everybody thought it was internally. I mean, this is one, I saw that they charged SBF, but they only charged him with one thing. And they also charged everybody else. And I thought with more stuff. So, I thought Caroline and everybody else had already pled guilty.
No, they got more.
They got hit with. So, look, there's a big lesson to learn there, guys.
Dude,
lawyer up at the beginning.
Yeah, don't plead anything until you get all of the prosecutors together, because you want them you want the deal to be all inclusive.
Yeah,
we are not attorneys. This is not legal advice.
No, but I think everybody can kind of see how this works out who's watching it in slow motion.
I have a bit of advice, though. This is show advice. If you're starting your own show, don't start eating jalapeno beef jerky at the beginning of the show. Not a smart move.
Podcasting pro.
I'm sure your wife must love that.
Okay. All right. So the theme of today's show, after taking down Ethereum single-handedly last week, Shaun agreed to join us to discuss the issues or concerns he has with Bitcoin. And so I'm looking forward to him taking the podium here and giving us his thoughts and things he thinks could be worked on, improved, whatever, Bitcoin. And I think this is the kind of discussion that needs to happen. And I think the Bitcoin community welcomes this kind of stuff for the most part. So, Shaun. Oh, by the way, Swan announced yesterday, Swan Bitcoin, with the toxic of toxic maximalists, Corey Klippstein, announced they're going public on the NASDAQ next year. So that was some interesting news.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Joe, by the way, you're muted in case you're trying to put in.
I was just trying to cover up the crunching noise.
I kind of, as I said, been in the space for a long time, originally a Bitcoiner, shitcoiner, and then back to being a Bitcoiner. But I think what's really important in anything like this is that you're analytical about where you put your money, because if you're not, you're probably going to lose your money. Mm-hmm. And as anybody who has the displeasure of having to listen to me on this show or out in Telegram land, or indeed even in my local pub knows, I am what they term a maximalist. I believe that Bitcoin is the only asset within the wider crypto sphere that I would put my money. I might trade some other shitcoins, but in terms of investing, I do it. But that's not to say that it's not without issues. And today I was kind of just going to mention there's 4 or 5 really key ones. And for me, like number one issue with Bitcoin, which from Genesis was recognized is privacy. So I guess everybody listening to this show will know this, but for anybody who's not really into the kind of crypto world, there's a fundamental difference between being anonymous and being private. So the core blockchain of Bitcoin, like all blockchains as far as I know, are anonymous. That just means that on the chain itself, there is no user details. It's a wallet, a balance, some other technical mumbo jumbo, and a list of transactions. So, however, every single transaction on the chain, from Genesis block to today, is available to see in real time and also historically. In the old days, this didn't really matter because there was virtually no KYC AML. And if we just take privacy as being not being able to link something to an individual person or entity, which is the definition I'm using. The challenge is that as the ecosphere changes and as basically everywhere is now requiring KYC AML, it's not that complicated for people who do on-chain analytics to start identifying wallets, origin wallets, and subsequently identifying movements of those wallets, and hence being able to say who did what and with whom. There are a few mixer technologies available for Bitcoin. Bitcoin operates at a chain level, something called CoinJoin, which allows transactions to be joined and so on. And there are mixer services like Wasabi, which would be the most well-known. However, it's been demonstrated that with enough computational power, you can actually trace transactions through these mixer services. So for me, this is a huge issue. Again, coming back to what the objective of Bitcoin is, and the objective of Bitcoin, in my opinion, and privacy are hand in hand. We're taking on government, and this really came to the fore when Russian funds were Navalny is the opposition leader. His donations were all coming into Bitcoin wallets that were held by Binance, and the Russian state could see who was donating, where the funds were going to, and for a sprinkling of laughter, CZ actually gave them all the KYC AML information they needed. And for me, this is like the perfect example of why privacy is important, because
right.
This is life and limb stuff. So there have been over the years many attempts to look at privacy on Bitcoin and on the main chain, and again the off-chain mixers are suspect at best. And primarily, the focus was always to let projects like Zcash and Monero act as test beds and see what worked. However, the results of those experiments really got ignored during the block size war, and privacy became a non-issue or something nobody was looking at in Bitcoin for years and years. And that's the problem. And I think it's got to the stage now where we will probably never see a direct on-chain solution for privacy in Bitcoin.
So you don't think that the core devs will ever implement something within the chain?
Again, I can be very wrong, but personally, I think it's too late. I mean, there's also a challenge here that when you're trying to generate something that is 100% publicly transparent and auditable, and auditable is important, that you actually, in order to conduct that audit and to make sure there are only 21 million Bitcoins at the end, that kind of competes against the privacy narrative in a way.
Right.
So there is that challenge. However, I do think, that there is Mimblewimble, which is a kind of privacy transaction technology on Litecoin. I don't think it'll ever get there. There are, however, off-chain solutions that people are looking at. So for me, it remains the number one weakness of Bitcoin. It can be dealt with if you're prepared to put in a lot of work. And even for an OG Bitcoiner like myself, it's a pain in the arse. Okay, and I regularly do this. I'm a privacy advocate, so I've given up trying to mix coins, do other air gapping techniques, but this is a problem. I don't think it will ever be addressed on chain, and I'm hopeful that maybe one day we might see an effective, easy to use off-chain solution. There's some kind of games you can play at Lightning and so on.
That's interesting. Oh, you think maybe via Lightning?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of potential options, but again, to be honest, Bitcoin's biggest weakness, privacy, in my opinion. Like it just stands out for me, head and shoulders above anything else. And you can address it. And we were having a chat in the new Telegram group, which congratulations, guys, love it.
Awesome, thank you.
About some of the privacy coins, and the reality is not many people put a premium on privacy. We all pay lip service to it, myself included. I'm not
right,
but we're not prepared to put in the work. And until a easier user off-chain solution can be identified, implemented, and tested, this is a big problem for Bitcoin. It's a number one problem, and I don't see any near-term solution personally.
That sucks. Yeah. I mean, and no, look, I think at the end of the day, there are only a few that are good at it. There is one chain, or there are two chains. Aztec is a layer 2, I believe. And Joe, what was the ones? Who are the guys we met at that show?
Secret.
Yeah, Secret. But I just don't know if they're actually as any more solid than what exists now. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you've also got to, I mean, privacy itself is a sliding scale. Yeah, me trying to hide a transaction from the NSA is very different than me not wanting my mates to know how much Bitcoin I have. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you see what I mean? So, like and there's a cost and effort scale there, which is, I'm personally wouldn't be happy if the NSA were tracking something, but like I'm not a target.
Yeah, you're not a terrorist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only when it comes to Ethereum.
That's good.
The kind of next thing that in terms of problems, this is kind of, I was discussing this actually with Fred earlier today, and he was going, this is kind of, if the meteor strikes the earth, you shouldn't be worried about your Bitcoin, but actually it's something that everybody in the crypto space should be aware of. This is quantum computing. Okay.
Sure.
So as we all know, quantum computing is an ongoing project, and like everything in the computational world, I have no doubt one day it becomes a reality.
Sure.
What does that mean to us in our lives? And then let's get to Bitcoin. Well, it means that anything that you think is cryptographically secured is going to end up not being cryptographically secured using today's cryptographic algorithms. Now, there are quantum resistant algorithms and quantum proof algorithms. So this is not a insolvable problem. It's what it would require for anybody who uses cryptography for everything. I'll get specifically to Bitcoin, and we use SHA-256 as the core cryptographic algorithm. A quantum computer could just fucking, just rip this thing apart. Ultimately, this is going to happen, and that means that your private keys are effectively vulnerable to somebody running even just a simple brute force attack on that. Now, again, a lot of this is kind of interesting because I have no doubt that Bitcoin will address this problem by ultimately replacing SHA-256 with a quantum resistant algorithm. But this kind of gets curious because when that happens, and it's a when, not an if. Yeah, I mean, quantum computing is coming. We're going to end up that anybody who has a live, newly updated wallet is going to be secure. But all the old wallets, the people who've died down to Satoshi's coins, are going to get emptied.
Oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that.
That is good.
And in fact, in a way, that's probably positive. Obviously, it would be negative for price. But this, again, one of the minor problems with Bitcoin is that, when you lose your keys, and a good friend of mine, and well known to you as well, Brad, but I won't name them, actually lost their seed phrase on a few Bitcoins this week. I was talking to them. We're trying to see what we can do about it. That happens. And I've done it myself, and I've left dust in 1,000 different wallets. And so, even though we are producing approximately 900 Bitcoins a day, we're also losing forever, these kind of things. And bizarrely enough, the quantum computing challenge is a good and a bad, because it's an issue that everybody is going to have to face at some point. It is technically resolvable, but there will be a benefit of effectively unlocking all of this dust and all of these large unused accounts ultimately. And so
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
There'll be some quantum spider that spiders every wallet and just finds everyone and cleans it all out.
Yeah, and again, what does that actually really mean? I mean, the Bitcoin is always on the chain, so it'll get redistributed. So in a kind of a strange way, it's a problem going forward. Timing on this threat is very difficult to know, because it's if the NSA or some other well-funded agency have this type of capability, they're not going to let us know. A bit like it's a bit like World War II and the
Enigma.
Yeah, cracking Enigma.
Yeah.
Once you had the capability, you absolutely did everything to make sure that you did not let anybody know you had it. So in terms of when we should really look at implementing this and so on, I think laughingly, Andronopoulos kind of said it brilliantly. He said, "We know they have it when Satoshi's wallets get emptied. Then we." But again, like this is a real thing. It is coming. It's not just Bitcoin. It's everything in our lives, every bit of privacy and security that we rely on. But it is something that we need to have. And again, sorry, Nibbles, let me just read that.
He said, mined BTC affect supply demand, but how about the lost BTC? It's effectively out of circulation forever, so it reduces supply, but lost coins don't fit the calculations. I think what Shaun's saying here is that lost coins are lost no more once lost coins that are in old non-quantum resistant wallets will be susceptible to being taken by whoever has the quantum technology.
Yeah, I mean, people who, when, and again, this is a when, and I don't know if it's, next year, a decade, or 5 decades, it is a when, is that it's a double-edged sword. And the kind of the good side of the double-edged sword is that this locked circulation gets set free back into, and there'll be near-term price consequences of that, but that is that. The next.
Wait, I have an important question, real quickly. Niblets, is that your dog? And we'll go on with the show from there. Okay. Next thing. What's the next? Wait a minute. I had a. Do you know if people are actively working on trying to resolve the? Is there like a working group working on? Hey, what are we going to do when quantum comes?
I mean, quantum resistant cryptography. Quantum resistant cryptography is not an ignored area, and it's not limited to Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin didn't invent SHA-256; they actually took it. It's an NSA protocol.
Right.
So there are lots of people around the world with big brains who have, and I believe there are already several quantum resistant algorithms. What the Bitcoin development community needs to do is obviously at some point get that into test as replace the SHA-256 and ultimately get it via the bit process out into production. I don't see it as a burning issue, but again, this is undoubtedly a weakness that could come to, and again, to go back to my conversation with Fred earlier in the day, he said, look, if that capability becomes widely available, like there's bigger problems in the world because everything that you rely on in terms of privacy, but equally Bitcoin, as it continues, in my opinion, to do its job of taking on government, moves further and further up the priority list. Obviously, if there's really is quantum capability now, it's not dealing with Bitcoin; it's dealing with state secrets and and so on.
Sure.
So,
yeah, but I think I would love to see Bitcoin get far ahead of the game, because at the end of the day, like you said, we're not going to know when they have it first. And while Bitcoin isn't going to be at the top of the list of attacks, obviously military installations, et cetera, would be state secrets from other countries, et cetera. It would certainly be something that would be weaponized if there were folks in charge who decided that they didn't want the financial system.
I mean, how does Bitcoin move up the threat list? It's actually very simple. If Bitcoin if commodities like oil become priced in Bitcoin, it becomes a serious threat to the
Exactly. So,
again, it's not something that is being ignored, but this is a bit like the privacy thing. That this is something that now I think the thought process and so on quantum computing is a lot more advanced in terms of an actual solution, but versus the privacy, which is still nobody really has a clear direction to travel. It's a big issue.
Yeah, really significant. I hope they'll get ahead of it. Nicola asks, I've listened to a podcast with ERCWL, I don't know if you pronounce that, Urkel, on Twitter, where the discussion was upgrading privacy on Bitcoin through rollups as a soft fork. Shaun, do you see it being possible?
It is. I mean, I think it's got back into focus. I mean, again, it was hugely. I mean, people forget the impact of the block size war on Bitcoin, and the development efforts and where the thought process was. I mean, Bitcoin was effectively for several years defending itself from annihilation.
Yep.
Because of the block size war, and I think that was massively distractionary, and it prevented Bitcoin advancing in any real way for years and years.
Yep.
Okay. And thankfully, I think those days are over. I think that projects like Lightning and everything be built on Lightning and so on, and SegWit and all of this stuff that ultimately came out. And I do think a lot more people, particularly when you consider what's happening in the wider world, a lot more of the devs, there's a lot more thoughtful process going into optimizing for the best privacy, remembering privacy as a sliding scale. Yeah. And so, I think there's lots of ways as to which one wins, whether it's roll-ups and so on. I don't know. I certainly don't think we'll see a hard fork on Bitcoin again for a long, long time. I think probably for the best usability, security compromise, and it will always be a compromise between how usable it is and how secure and how private it is. it will probably be some kind of an off-chain solution.
Yeah. By the way, Niblets, that is Niblets' cute as hell dog in his profile photo. So that's a cute friggin' dog. But Niblets asks, airdropping counterfeit fiat was weaponized in World War II to collapse war production through inflation. Oh, interesting. So as inflation as a weapon, I love that. So as BTC embeds deeper into economies and politics, this vulnerability will be a serious security risk. Yeah, absolutely.
And again, this comes down to the objective of Bitcoin. I mean, there's probably fuck all reason for any government to worry about, 5 or 6 down the chain, other than money laundering and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if Bitcoin continues on its road to its objective, it moves higher and higher up the priority targets. So quantum computing and so on is something that is being considered, but is not resolved, but is resolvable. And for me, the biggest challenge with quantum computing is not the how, the specifics of the how. It's more the when.
Yeah, get it. Totally get it.
And there will be a massive price disruption, in my opinion, because I think it's estimated there's 3 to 4 million coins that are locked just in old wallets. Yeah. And that supply hits the market. But again, sure, I'm a trader. I hate to see price go down unless I'm short. But ultimately, the redistribution of that locked up supply is probably a positive.
Hey, Shaun, quick question. You know how with like in the U.S. and Europe and everywhere else, they never worry about movements from bank to bank because they're like, we can always find out who did it. So we can always figure out where the funds came from if it's a bank to bank transfer. With all the groups, I haven't heard about this lately, but I remember reading articles a few years ago about a couple of companies that were actually mapping all the BTC wallets and IDing them or trying to ID them. Do you see a world where there could ever be like BTC wallet to wallet, like equivalency so that, I don't know if it'd be what the phrase would be, but, to where each one was almost treated like an institution or like an account at an institution. And amongst those wallets, nobody really cared, but the outlier wallets that weren't, say, I don't want to say ID'd, but, let's say whitelisted maybe, that those would be the ones they'd really look at. Do you think that would ever happen in this like post-quantum type world?
Well, in terms of that's kind of more privacy, I think that's a fact already. Okay, we do have blacklisted Bitcoin wallets. Okay, now in the same way there are blacklisted Ethereum wallets. The difference is that just because the wallet's blacklisted, it can continue to do whatever the fuck it wants on the Bitcoin chain. Yeah. Okay. So you can blacklist one of my wallets and I can send and receive from it, and there is nothing on earth that can stop it. But to give you an example, because I trade a lot on CEXs, and I have a lot of historical Bitcoin that I used to constantly mix. Again, just to protect my own privacy. I'm not a North Korean hacker or it's the proceeds of mining over the years. Yeah. So when I go to deposit a coin that has been mixed, okay, I'm immediately red flagged. Okay, so they know which coins are mixed. So,
right.
And I have sent some coins to some friends who have had this issue where they put it on their exchange and it comes up going, well, this is mixed. You need to prove how you got it. Okay. And it goes further than that. If I send from an exchange to a mixer, okay, I get something back going, we're going to freeze your account, okay, until you explain why you're mixing it. Okay, so this is, this is the world that we live in, and again, why privacy is such an important feature, and why the longer that you're on chain and the longer you're moving your coins, the more they know about you. And so on.
So Shaun, when that happens, let's say, and I mean, I could see how people who have been in the game for a long time would have a lot of mixed coins in wallets just because of privacy. But when when you move off the exchange to, let's say, a mixer or something like that, and they go, oh, no, no, no. Or you're bringing them into an exchange and they're like, no, these are flagged unless you can prove it. How do you prove it?
Well, in my case, I mean, I just go, look, I mine them and they go, okay, send me your electricity bills. So I contact my accountant to say, dig up some electricity bills there. And trust me, these are not the kind of electricity bills you generate from turning your computer on in the morning. Okay. and so because I'm kind of this horrible word, like professionally in the mining business and a professional trader, okay, I can legally prove that I mined. For friends who I have sent coin to who've been flagged for this, I end up having to go through the mix record and go, look, I sent them to Joey. Yeah, here it is on one side of the mix and here it is in the other. Yeah. Which you can do because that proves, the person who mixed it and kind of completely invalidates the reason for mixing it as well if you want to utilize this in a central exchange. So again, I cannot overstate, the quantum computing thing is the quantum computer thing. It's a real threat to everything on the planet, but the privacy thing is, and there are lots of tricks that you can play to go. I mean, I'll give you a really simple one. If you want privacy, there's exchanges like NiceHash, which are hash rate exchanges. Okay. So you can go on with your Bitcoin and you can rent hash power. Okay. You can use that hash power to generate fresh coin. So I rent hash power with my old Bitcoin. Okay. And the result of the hash power of the mining is that I get newly minted Bitcoin on the other side. Nice. So there's lots and lots and lots of ways that you can protect your privacy. But my point is that none of them are easy. I struggle with it all the time. I am still a massive privacy advocate, and I have no doubt that somewhere in some government department they think they know how much coin I have, and they're probably not that far off.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep beating up on Bitcoin. What else you got?
I've got two more things.
Okay.
I'm sighing to myself here. Keys. The security budget. Okay, which again you hear a lot of talk about. So out on Twitter. And what is the security budget? And how is it's Justin? I think he ran.
Justin says the fact you have to prove ownership based on an exchange policy, not even a law, and they have the power to freeze your account is infuriating. Yeah. Same with bank. I mean, look. I mean, everybody that controls your money has the power.
So
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, no. I mean, again, like this to me is, if you were saying, the number one glaring problem with Bitcoin is security. The rest of them are issues to be addressed, and I'm coming to one which, in my opinion, gets mentioned all the time. If you're a Maxi, and probably 90% of people have never thought of it, and is more about price in the future than anything, and that's the security budget. So this term you'll hear in Bitcoin is security budget. And Bitcoin is secured by mining power, which is expressed in hash rate, yes? And today, as an example, we hit an all-time high in hash rate. The concept is very simple. The more hash rate, the more secure the network, because the more costly and difficult it is for somebody to obtain 51% of the network or sufficient of the network to cause attack. So in essence, the fees that miners get paid are in effect a security budget. Yeah, the more profitable mining is, the more people get involved, the higher the hash rate. And
sure.
And what's the problem here? Well, the problem is the nature of the halvening. So, every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin, newly minted Bitcoin, reduces by 50%. And eventually, I think 2031 or something, miners will be producing no Bitcoin. Miners get paid in two ways. They get paid in freshly minted coin, And so if you win a block, you get your 6.5 Bitcoins, but you also get paid the transaction fees in that block. So the concern with respect to the security budget is what happens as the block reward continues to reduce. Is there enough hash power to make the network secure? And again, this is a very real, and so some people go around and say, well, Bitcoin will ultimately have to modify itself to add more Bitcoin so that mining remains profitable, i.e. the security budget is always there. Now, again, to put this in some perspective, this is only really an issue in 1 to 2 decades. Okay, so if you take current halvings and so on and kind of reasonable expectations in price, we can expect this. But it is something that needs to be considered. The ultimate bet here is that the transaction fees, okay, are sufficient as the block rewards continue to decline and decline and decline, that the transaction fees are sufficient to encourage hash power to keep growing, and i.e. that the security budget is sufficient to secure the chain. But it is a risk. It's a risk that needs to be thought through. There are some more thoughtful people who are looking at how you can incentivize potentially mining using off-chain solutions rather than. I personally don't think there's a snowball chance in hell that we'll ever see the potential issue in 1 to 2 decades be resolved by an increase in supply. I think that there's a lot of thought going into how you can do this with sidechain incentives, but ultimately I've got to believe actually that the price trajectory of Bitcoin ensures that the transaction fees are more than sufficient to act as a security budget. But like if we're still at 20 grand in 2 decades, that may not be true. So
right,
again,
absolutely.
This is ultimately about the price of Bitcoin. And also, if you think of the game theory, in many ways, if Bitcoin is still 20 grand in 2 decades, when you consider inflation the way it is, it's probably not worth fucking securing anymore.
It's true.
That's
a really good point.
So, i.e. the project has failed. Yeah. So
yeah.
But again, it's something, it is an issue. It is something that needs to be addressed, not urgently, but it needs to be addressed thoughtfully. And again, there's no one resolution is to leave it the way it is and hope the price adjusts. And that may be where we end up going in 20 years or so. The other issue which people are looking at right now, are utilizing sidechain rewards for things like you could conceptually think if you layer in.
You mean like some shitcoin?
No. I mean,
okay.
If you so increasing transaction fees by the use of
ding.
Oh God, this is difficult enough for me, Brad.
Here we go. Ding.
I'm just fucking with you, Shaun. I couldn't resist.
This is not Ethereum where we just go around breaking things slowly. Is that the strap line? Does it move slowly and break stuff? Something like that. I'm not sure. Okay.
I just couldn't resist. It was just sitting there, and I'm sidechain. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, and again, so ultimately, this comes down to not just price. Price is a big factor. The other thing is actually chain activity. Okay? Right. So the more active the chain, the more the fees, the higher the price, those fees. So this is an unknown. It is certainly a potential issue into the future. My personal view, for what it's worth, is that if it really is an issue in 20 years, we fucked this up. So, there you go.
Yeah, makes sense. I really think that's probably the best approach. It's like, look, if this thing is going to go where it should go, then the price will be high enough that it'll make it well worth it to secure the network for the transaction fees. And so And it makes total sense that if it's not, I mean, I guess some could argue that stabilization of price somewhere makes it more suitable to financial whatever. But it just, the whole experiment, you're right, has failed if it can't get to the price.
Yeah,
point
I mean, if you were to kind of say to me, what would I like to see? I'd actually like to see in the next 10 years price stabilization, because that will increase transaction volume. The reason that there's so little transaction volume is everybody wants to keep their gold and nobody wants to spend it because they think the gold is going to be worth more into the future. Yeah. So again, it is an issue. It's not a burning issue, but it is something that if you're looking at investing in something like Bitcoin, you really need to consider and need to understand these. And I'm going to side with Udi, the complete scumbag, on my last and final issue.
Wait. You calling Udi a scumbag?
I'm joking.
Okay.
I actually like Udi. But like,
Udi's a nice guy.
Yeah, as a Bitcoin maxi, you're required to shit on Udi. Okay?
I love Udi.
He's kind of like the Roger Hart without going total shit.
Oh, no. Udi is nowhere that scumbag.
Is he wearing a onesie? Does he wear a onesie too?
I love Udi. I think Udi is the voice of reason for everybody. Anyway, go ahead. You'll agree with him on something.
I actually like Udi. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I think that he's also an engagement harvester. So
no, that's true. I would give you that. He loves the attention. Absolutely.
So now you're more into usability. So again, for people like me who've been around in the game, and I think this probably applies more to Bitcoin than other chains, but it is a real issue for Bitcoin to take the next step, and that's nothing really to do with the chain, but to do how we interface with Bitcoin. Okay, so Udi has been on a bit of a rampage about seed phrases, and that it's not reasonable to expect a normie to do the 12-word thing, and if they can't do the 12-word thing, they've effectively lost their Bitcoin forever. And I tend to agree, and a lot of the UI interfaces and usability of everything that interacts with Bitcoin is frankly fucking awful. Yeah. Okay. There's to bring this to a wider, if the intention, which is certainly my intention, is to bring Bitcoin to a wider audience outside of CEXs, outside of places where you can log into Coinbase, buy your $1,000 of Bitcoin and leave it there. And if you forget your Coinbase password, well, they have your KYC. You can recover it, assuming that Coinbase is still there. But the objective here is that people self-custody, and the options and the range of tools and the interfaces that we have are frankly horrific. Yeah.
Even if there wasn't a seed phrases, even if there wasn't a seed phrase or security problem, the interfaces are just shit. So
they're just terrible. Yeah, I mean, and again, the way the Bitcoin community went during, and again, I think a lot of the psychology of and where the development effort, you really have to bring it back to the block size war, where basically, I mean, that was a war, man. That wasn't, I mean, that was, that was a real battle for the heart and soul of Bitcoin. And I think it took the wind out of everybody's sails, and that if it hadn't happened, Bitcoin would be in a different place today.
Shaun, quick question. Can you just do a quick, 30-second summary on what that was? I'm not entirely, I mean, I think I know what you're talking about, but if I'm sus, I think some of the other people might not. The block size war. What does that mean exactly?
So the Bitcoin block size is limited to a megabyte. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
And that effectively places a limit on transactions per second. Okay, to keep it simple. Yeah.
Okay.
And a proposal was put forward from people we call the big blockers. The people who wanted bigger blocks, effectively unlimited blocks, that this would improve transaction speed. The primarily proponents, and again, at some way that sounds so rational. And again, this is what I love about the Bitcoin community, because they didn't just jump on this, they actually genuinely teased it out, saying, what does this really mean? Yeah. Okay. And what it really meant is effectively that you're forcing small miners out, because the small miners, because obviously the block size affects the mining equipment, and you begin to centralize power in the hands of these bigger miners. And indeed, people pushing it were a few well-known people, but primarily the miners. Yeah, it's primarily this was in the interest of the miners. It was in the interest of the ASICs manufacturers, and it was against the interests of the small guy. Okay, so the people with all the power, all the money, and all the influence in the space thought they could just get this, and there was literally a war. The great book called The Block Size War. It's on Audible. Really worth it. Like really worth a listen to. And ultimately, the big blockers lost, and that's where Bitcoin Cash came from.
Right, that's where the forks came.
Oh, okay, that's when it forked. Got it. Okay,
because they took their toys and went home.
Yeah, and a lot of the focus is on Bitcoin Cash, but actually the damage in terms of development and effort, and I mean this was civil war, man. I mean there were punches thrown at this shit. Yeah, okay. Took the sales out of Bitcoin for years afterwards, and it set back adoption as well. Yes. I mean the forks, the con that they pulled with Bitcoin Cash was freaking horrendous. I mean, they conned newbies who were coming in for the bull run into buying Bitcoin Cash instead of Bitcoin, because they were branding it, advertising it, and calling it Bitcoin. They owned Bitcoin.com.
Yeah. It was
the big blockers owned Bitcoin.com.
Yeah. It was a total con, which then told you everything you needed to know about those people and their motivations. Sorry, go ahead, Shaun.
Yeah, and again, so I think a lot of, and Bitcoin is in some ways rightly and wrongly criticized for the rate of development, which is slow and steady. I think part of that is that it took a long time. I mean, it was well into 2019, as far as I was concerned anyway, before the repercussions of this fight that started in 2015, 2016 were actually over. And real Bitcoiners, you see, it's kind of like the Northern Ireland conflict. Whatever you say, somebody's going to hate you. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was pretty bad. And a lot of the stuff that was being, the people were looking to address at the time just got absorbed into this huge clusterfuck of an argument. And now we look at Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV and we laugh. But trust me, that was not the prevailing attitude back in the day. It was generally Bitcoin could be replaced by this thing. Yeah. It was the Bitcoin's DAO hack in a way, in terms of splitting dev teams and so on. But I think more vicious and more prolonged than the ETC split. And a really great read or listen is actually The Block Size War. Is absolutely fantastic, because it's a journalist. He goes around, attends all the key meetings and so on. So I think Bitcoin devs are really, to be honest, only in the past couple of years have really got back to work. And my final criticism of Bitcoin, and look, there's loads of little things about plain text between nodes and all this technical widgetry, but actual usability, and I'm siding with Udi, the Mossad agent on this one, okay, which is the unusability of Bitcoin wallets for normie means that they inevitably end up on a CEX.
Yep.
I go back to point one.
Right. Well, actually, which takes you into something else that I would argue is there are some Bitcoiners who think the difficulty is a good thing, and who work against kind of adoption from my perspective, because they don't want it to be easier. They want people to have to learn it and work at it and struggle to get Bitcoin. And look, I can understand some of the motivation behind that. I get the philosophy, but it just, to me, if you want Bitcoin to be the separation of money from state, then you don't make it more difficult for people to use. But
yeah, I mean, they're all, you see, the problem with a lot of these things, I mean, Gavin Anderson, I think it was Gavin Anderson said it brilliantly, is that, or it could have been Jack Ma, but he said, look, you can easily criticize any part of the design of Bitcoin, yeah? Okay, but when you look at what you would replace it with, okay, you begin to understand that there are negative consequences. And when you really think this through, and I think the Bitcoin community is quite academic in its approach to this once you get off fucking toxic Maxis on crypto Twitter, and that it's actually quite considered and careful. And again, because we're not in a rush to break things. Yeah, we're acting slowly to make sure that things are done. And I think things have got missed over the years, again, in my opinion, primarily due to the block size war that are coming back. But undoubtedly, usability, UI, ownership of coins is an issue. There is an argument that it's your personal responsibility to remember 12 fucking words. And if you can't, tough shit. Yeah, I don't side on that argument, by the way. Okay. And I think that self-custody is important, and making self-custody easier for a wider population is only good for Bitcoin, as long as it's thought out and done carefully. But right now, undoubtedly a weakness. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I actually agree that the interfaces, the actual UIs, right? The actual UIs for users in wallets is shit and garbage. But I actually disagree with the seed phrase issue. I actually think that's something that is more of a conceptual, cultural, educational thing for people who are kind of used to how their bank accounts work or logging in anywhere else. And I think one of the ways to argue that is to just make it clear that Bitcoin is more than the speculative asset. It is your own bank. And I will tell you that, I mean, I've said this on the show a million times, that 99% of the people that hold Bitcoin or any other token on an exchange, a centralized exchange, have zero clue what the concept behind that coin is, right? They bought it because their buddy said they could make money on it.
Yep.
And so I think a big part of that user experience of the seed phrase being bad is the lack of really good education. The rest of the UI issues, I think, are a mess and garbage. And we have developers who are not UI people creating UIs, and that's a big part of the problem. But I actually think that the seed phrase is doable. I think it's actually something that can be adapted.
Again, somebody highly technical competent. And again, I'm not going to name them. They know who they are. They are listening. And who took some coin off exchange to because it was safe, when all the exchanges looked dodgy.
Right.
Okay. Set up their seed phrases, wrote them down. Okay. Went to find out they'd mistyped the seed phrase.
Duh.
Okay. So they have their seed phrase and so on. So, that experience only encourages people to hold.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's a valid point. That's a valid point.
I don't think there is no easy answer to this. I mean, what I always say to people is like, when I tell them to stick it on a ledger, I go, look, consider it like a block of gold. If you stick a block of gold under your bed and somebody steals it, you don't have a block of gold anymore. You don't have anybody to call. Yeah. The bank isn't going to go, oh, actually, yeah, we can reset your password. And that type of mentality, we'll never get away from private keys. Seed phrases are just a front for private keys. Maybe there's something else we can do. Yeah. And maybe we need to start considering, again, sliding scales.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
look at this fancy ass thing I got sent in the mail for my seed phrases. This steel wallet.
Yep.
Hold on, I can't read them very well. Hold on, I can't read it.
You can't because I haven't done it yet.
Fuck it, and I was recording that.
The whole world knows.
Knowing my luck, though, like I'd hack it and it'd just be Ethereum. You know?
Exactly. That's all it would be. No, that's really interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
I genuinely I kind of did ask, and I was going like, there's lots of little things, but like they are my 4 top things wrong with Bitcoin. And if I was to rank order them, quantum computing and security budget, look, plenty of time, think addressable, but privacy and UI and self-custody. Privacy, UI and self-custody to me are top of the list. Yeah. And these are things that can be and need to be addressed in the near term if we are going to genuinely take that next step into accessibility to people outside of us who are in the space and know how to do it. And if we fuck up, we've nobody but ourselves to blame.
One of the things that I had a concern about was, do you think that enough people have stepped up and ponied up now that the core devs are actually making a decent living?
Yeah, I mean, that's a reasonable point. I mean, for those who don't know, there isn't a Bitcoin Foundation. There isn't some central pot of money to pay developers. How it works is a grant system, yeah? Right. So I can donate some money to a Bitcoin dev, and I have, and I will continue to do, and lots of other people do it. And I like the model. Yeah, I really, really like the model. I think that it's by far a better model than any other model. Again, because it's one of these things that on face value you should say these guys should be earning $1 million a year. That's fucking great, yeah. Okay, but then you begin to look at it and go, well, there are consequences to that, and the consequences, control, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I think the model works. It's worked pretty well. I think, strange enough, if Bitcoin continues to increase in price, the model works even better as more OGs get richer and richer and richer. The impact of funding devs becomes increasingly less. So, I can see why it might be seen as an issue. I personally don't. If a developer is truly into this for money, trust me, he's not a Bitcoin developer, or she's not a Bitcoin developer.
Yeah, they're true believers, right? In order to make what you're making as a developer in the core team, you're there because you want this to succeed. And
it's I think we discussed this a couple of months ago, Brad. It's strangely enough, money isn't as big a motivator as people think it is. The academic research on that is out. And so also a lot of the Bitcoin research is actual research, not coding. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not like a bunch of devs sitting in a room, tapping at keyboards. It's actual academic research. So I can see why people might think it's an issue. For me, I think it's the best way we've developed yet. And look, here's the thing: if you want to start up a company to develop a bit for Bitcoin and fund it with $10 billion, you're welcome to. Yeah, right. That doesn't mean that your BIP is going to get accepted.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I mean, there were accusations during the block size wars that corporations who were paying core devs on salary, et cetera, had some motivation, made those developers suspect. But at the end of the day, it all worked out, right? So the right thing happened.
These guys don't get to, again, one of the things about, a core dev, whatever that term means in Bitcoin, and I'm not 100% sure, by the way, can decide that he wants to write some code to inflate the supply to 100 million. Yeah. Right. Okay. But the way it works is he has to make that proposal. Right. Okay. And then the consensus process has to accept it. Sure. So, there really is this thing. You can go off and propose and make any changes you want in Bitcoin, but the chances of anything like that ever being I think we're on BIP 300 at the moment. Yeah. Right. And I'm not sure how many BIPs have actually ever been accepted. It is an ossified system. and I love that. Genuinely, I think that's what makes
that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
We're not, in the Ethereum world of move slowly and break it.
Yeah. I fucking love it. I love embracing that. And I mean, I think that's why Bitcoin, will always be the foundations of this. And even no matter what gets developed on the move fast and break things side of the world, that brings a lot of stability and security to people, and makes a ton of sense. So.
Yeah, I mean, my ultimate vision in the space is that all this other stuff that's happening is fine, but if it's to do with money, ultimately it will end up doing it with the best money in the world. And while I can point out all these issues, and I've done other shows where I'd say it's the only place I keep my money. I think that ultimately all of this stuff, if it's to do with money, ultimately uses the best money in the world. And I still think, despite the flaws, despite the fact there isn't really a community, it's a very different animal than a lot of other stuff out there. I still believe that it's just not in the same category as anything else. But again, privacy, usability, the security budget, quantum computing are all things that need to be addressed. And there's a myriad of other smaller things, by the way, but I'm not going to get into them. Yeah.
Niblet says, what if BTC functions less as transactional currency and more like an endowment value store that people hold and use back and mint other tokens as mediums of exchange and units of account? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, no. I mean, that's almost the definition of a reserve asset, the way gold, the gold standard. Yeah. But ultimately, my argument as to why that's not necessary is it was necessary with gold because it's very difficult to, chop up an ounce of gold to go and buy my groceries. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So having some paper representation of that value of gold makes sense.
Sure.
Those rules don't apply to a fungible digital asset. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can pay a SAT, I don't need another representation of it. And you do then go down the rabbit hole of paper Bitcoin and so on, and all of the bad things that we see, have seen in this cycle. And look, it's going to happen again. Yeah, people will start to, offer crazy leverage and all of this stuff. It's going to happen again, but that is outside of the chain. That's outside of what it actually is. Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, I could set up a coin tomorrow, which is, I don't know, a Bitcoin's, a stable SAT. I say, look, for every stable SAT issue, trust me, over here, I have a real SAT sitting in the bank. Yeah. Right. And I can mint a billion, trillion of them. Yeah. Okay. That isn't as appealing to me as just saying, look, it's a fucking SAT. There it is. Like, there's no reason for it, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Awesome. I want to say,
I love it.
That's awesome. That's a great list. And I think those are all valid concerns. I think most everything seems addressable. The privacy thing is probably going to be problematic. And obviously the quantum thing's a problem for everybody and everything in tech. So, but hopefully the devs will address that. And frankly, from an adoption perspective, the biggest problem to me is the UI stuff. I don't think that we should be rushing into anything there because it's a very nuanced area. Yeah? And this is what I love now that we've kind of fully got the big blockchain war behind us. There's some real thought going into it. This is not just let's hire a UI guy and let him at it. There's a lot to be understood here about this, and again, ultimately, I'm about to dump you from the show.
The worst fucking thing that could happen is to get some marketing guys involved. Like that.
I am no longer a marketing guy. What the fuck? What the fuck is this?
Man, that's funny.
Here's what's encouraging for me as a Bitcoiner is shit's happening again. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
And that's great. And again, so yeah, problems, there'll be new problems. There's a load of little ones. I mean, I didn't include things like, 51% attack of the miners, because it's not an issue. It's just a misunderstood issue. Yeah.
Right.
I don't see any of these. I'm talking about things that I would generally go, if I was in any way kind of really devoted to improving Bitcoin, instead of just the amount of Bitcoin I have, but improving the protocol, these are the things that would top my list. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Makes sense.
Hey,
one thing
Brad,
I'm really grateful for is that it's hard to tell that that's Do Kwon in that picture. I couldn't have taken this show the whole time.
Really?
Dude, some artists did that. They tell me
it's awesome looking. It's really cool, but I'm just grateful it doesn't like blatantly look at it like him.
It looks like it's winking, though. I mean, that's the thing. When I look away, it kind of looks like it winks, but it doesn't, obviously.
It's currently clever. But it's currently deploying more capital.
Yeah, exactly. Give me 25 mil. One thing I was going to tell everybody, Shaun put a really good piece in the Telegram channel, some charting, some TA on BTC. So I recommend everybody go in there and take a look at it, because I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, and the most important thing about that to me is the fucking simplicity of it. We all get so lost in this complexity. Let me see if I can pull that up. You put that in general, didn't you, Shaun?
Put it in Bitcoin.
Yeah, the BTC one.
Okay. By the way, everybody, let me put that back on screen. Here's the address, t.me/mission DeFi. But essentially, he basically showed the lines, the TA that he thinks determine where we are and whether or not we're really breaking out from the bear. And it makes a ton of fucking sense. And it's this whole concept of zoom out, right? Stop getting caught in these hourly, daily, minutia of what's going on in the moment, and focus on the bigger picture. And it's such a relief to look at that and step back and say, oh God, I don't have to stress over everything that's happening every hour. And it makes a big difference.
Again, one of the lessons, you learn these lessons the hard way, trust me, is that there's always way more time than you think there is. Yeah. If you're doing intraday trades, that's one thing. I'm talking about if you're trying to invest in an asset for, a half cycle, like a bull cycle, or even longer, where, and again, I would say this to people that, because I love the chat in in Telegram as well about the 10 for next cycle. But when you consider these things, it's also worth considering risk-adjusted reward. Okay, right. So you go, look, this thing could do 1,000x, or 100x, or whatever the next cycle is going to be in terms of a low cap, something low cap. Okay, you also have to factor into that risk adjust that. Yeah, there's a reason. Yeah. There's a reason that it may do that, is because it's risky. Don't get me wrong, I'll be shitcoining like a fucking pro as soon as I think it's in. Okay, but I'll be doing it with a very small part of my stack.
Sure.
And I'll be hoping to hit a couple of 100xers, and probably 8 of them will just die.
What was your line? Yeah. What did you say? You said something awesome about when you jump in on shitcoins. I can't find it though.
Yeah. So I mean, I can share the screen here, Brad, if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Just find it here. Sorry, 1 second here. Open up your chat. How do I present? Sorry, guys, just let me get this.
That's all right.
Open this up. So, moving averages. Okay, that I think if you. Okay, so basically, like when you zoom out to the history of Bitcoin, this couldn't be simpler. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Every bear market. This is in logarithmic mode, by the way, because I know people use non-log and it looks horrendous. So if you go into log mode on TradingView, okay, you see that every single bear market involves, in logarithmic mode, testing a downward trend line. Every single one, yeah? Okay, even back to the first one, okay? Once it's broken, Okay, it has always indicated that we are in a bottom range. Okay, and what I would say to people, and these little green things that we just deleted, these little green things are 3-month periods where once this broke a trend line, I would recommend just TWAP for 3 months. Right. And what you get is the advantage of price up, price down. Okay, and you'll get an average entry price, say, around the yellow arrow, and you just write it up. Okay, and so the question then becomes, where are we now? Well, the descending bear trend line is pretty fucking obvious. Yeah, it's always obvious, by the way, and we ain't broken it. And this is why I keep spoofing on about 23. Yeah, break 23, which is the current position on this trend line, and my narrative starts to flip that we're accumulating, or we're in the bottoming process, but we haven't. So that's that. I think, again, for cycle long trades. Now the problem, of course, is when this is jamming around here off a small base, it's up 20%, down 20%. It's fucking with your head, yeah. But I would always go, look. Even you can see back in 2018 when we broke the descending, we got a God candle, yeah. And what I would say about that doesn't matter, because if you did TWAP over this, you get an average entry in and around here. So it's good enough. Unless you're a godlike trader, okay, and unless you're trading micro time scales. But if you want to buy for the cycle or generational, because I do think this bottom will never be visited again. Personal opinion, not advice on Bitcoin, just to be clear.
Right.
That if you wanted to get a foothold into Bitcoin, my recommendation, not advice, because I could be completely wrong, is I'd wait for us to break this trend line, and then I'd just buy the same amount. I'd take whatever I'm going to buy, and I'd buy it over the next 120, 150 days.
Right.
Equally divide and let it go. And even if we get a God candle, because even when we break this resistance and we get a God candle, to want to know relative to the move, where we ended up here, it's kind of completely irrelevant. And again, it's just about the least risky thing. Because I actually think, if you want my opinion, we're more likely to do something like this cycle. Right. I think we're going to get rejected here, in my opinion, soon enough. We'll end up breaking it, and then we'll just wobble around because of the macro ground. Could be wrong. But again, the way I look at this, very simple. Until that's broken, I'm not looking to accumulate long-term positions.
What's interesting is I'm looking at the one. I'm sorry. Yeah. Look, what's interesting is you look at the previous one, the one that's up right now, the green box there, and you can see it's almost the same shape as the one going on now, except that it plowed through the trend line, whereas now we're just bumping up against it, if at all. And so while it looks similar, I think a lot of people would go, oh, that, the fractal types or whatever would be like, oh, that looks similar, but, they're not looking at that trend line. And so that's, if you look at, like, say, that 2019, right where that yellow arrow is below it, where it moves up, that candle there is the same as what we see, like, in the last couple of days, but it was going through it, not approaching it. And so that, most people won't pick that up.
For me, I'll go back to what I think. Can you guys see? Oh, hang on, I've got to. How do I do? Hang on, let me. Sorry, change this. I have it here somewhere. For me, in lower time frames, I think that that is not the chart. Hang on a minute here. Let me load up a. Again, if you zoom in, but actually we don't even need to zoom in, because zoom in kind of defeats the point. Look, we're either reject here or we're not. My current view is we will reject it, we'll go down further, but I'm okay with being wrong, because if I'm wrong, I have a very clear, I go off and start accumulating whatever I want for the next run.
Right.
And so that's literally the way I look at it. And I think, again, way more time than you think. Yeah. Even the dumps take way longer than you think they do, or the pumps, when these are weekly candles. Yeah. As I always say about 2018, it took 7 weeks from top to bottom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though it felt at the time like the world was ending in real time. And the COVID dump was a 3-week dump. Yeah. Even though I'm pretty convinced that happened in about 4 hours personally. Yeah. It didn't.
Absolutely. That's fantastic, Shaun. Thanks for all of that. I really appreciate it. As always, we look forward to seeing you next week, but thanks for doing this again.
Next week,
super cool, man.
Back to picking on something other than my beloved Bitcoin.
There you go. Niblets, Justin, Nicola, Shizzy, thank you so much for joining us and participating today. We love and appreciate you. All of you listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please take a moment to rate, review us, and make sure you're subscribed. And if you're watching on YouTube, Joe would like you to smash the thumbs up and also click the subscribe button and click the little bell so you get alerts. Appreciate you. We're here every day, Monday through Friday from noon to 1-ish. And we appreciate you listening and taking part in it. You know what's cool about the Telegram chat, Joe? 2 people during the chat last night were talking about the fact that like one of them listens to us while he's eating dinner every day, so he's not watching live, and the other one listens to it while he's walking his dog. But it's just kind of crazy to think about these people that we're getting to be a part of their lives. It's a lot of fun.
It's flattering. It's humbling. I mean, I'm just I love the fact that we can, the 3 of us can share all this collective wisdom that we have. I mean, since we're all kind of approaching 39 at this point, which is kind of double what a lot of people are out there. It's stuff that can hopefully help everyone. And obviously people are interested. So it does make me feel good to be contributing something that's more community-based versus individual-based.
Yep.
So thank you, everyone.
Nicholas says, thank you guys. It's always a pleasure watching. Thanks, Nicola, for being here. We appreciate you. That's it. One of the legends of music died yesterday. So go listen to some Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. David Crosby was a legend and a big part of my life. So I would go out with a video, but we'll probably get blocked again on YouTube. So I will not. But appreciate everybody being here. Shaun, as usual, thank you so much for being here. Joe, have a great afternoon. We'll talk to you guys soon.
You too, buddy. Thank you, Shaun. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, guys. See you in Telegram.
All right, guys.
Okay, take care.
Cheers, man.